Hey folks, thank you for joining. We are going to get started in about a minute or two.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Delane Powerful, and I use they, them pronouns, and I am the operations person at National Bailout. And I just want to welcome you all to National Bailout's webinar series. Today we're going to move through troubleshooting. So this could be difficulties that folks are having with fundraising, with their communications, with finding our people inside to bring home and figuring out how to work with state actors, to finding supportive services and resources in your communities. This webinar is to think through all the possible challenges that folks may be experiencing and facing while they're moving through their bailouts and figure out strategical solutions and actions to help navigate and troubleshoot those challenges. So today we are joined by Arissa Hall, who is Director of National Bailout, and we're also going to be joined by Kayla Gore, who is a lead organizer with the official Black Lives Matter Memphis, and who also has been holding down the supportive services. So we want to start you all off with some background and grounding, and I'm going to pass it off to Arissa just to move us through what we've been experiencing and seeing so far in this bailout season. So I'll pass it off to you, Arissa. And you are on mute, my love.
Yes, I was. Hey, y'all. My name is Arissa, and my pronouns are she and hers. And I am the director of National Bailout, as Celine shared, and my phone is ringing. So just to give y'all a quick background, for those of y'all who have been here, know that this is a weekly webinar series, and we started off about 4 weeks ago with a ground and an intro to Black Mama's Bailout and why we do the work that we do. And we talked about some supportive services, we talked about comms, and today, as Delaney said, we'll be talking about troubleshooting. And next week will be our last webinar of the weekly series, and that'll be a recap where you'll get to hear from the local organizers about how the bailouts went, and for ground the bailouts are happening. The bailouts have started back in March in response to COVID-19, but our primary week of bailouts will be this week and next week as well. So you'll get to hear from local organizers about how that went. So just for background, National Bailout, we are a collective of Black organizers, communicators, and magic makers who are committed to building a community-based movement to end pretrial detention and mass criminalization. Our primary tactic that we do that through is bailouts. Being known for the creation of Black Mama's Bailout, which is a tactic, and we are here, it is Black Mama's Bailout Week, y'all. And basically, we are trying to bail out as many Black mamas and caregivers before Mother's Day. So Mother's Day is on Sunday. So we are really trying to get our people out of cages. And when I say cages, I mean jails and the immigrant detention centers across the US. We recognize that bail and pretrial detention is harmful to our communities. That is a driver of mass incarceration. And as people that believe in abolition and believe in freedom, we recognize that it needs to end for our people to be free and for us to build whole and new and beautiful worlds. So our Black Mama's Bailout is a primary tactic for us to do that. And we also have 3 strategic priorities. And those priorities is to continue to bail out Black mamas and caregivers, because that's what we do. That is why we are here. And that is how we change the material conditions of our people immediately. And especially now during COVID-19, the urgency is real. And we have to get our folks out because we recognize that people being inside of a cage is essentially a death sentence. Our second priority is to build political community with the folks that we bail out. So we don't see ourselves specifically as supportive service providers or bail payers, which are really, really important work in titles and roles. But we also see ourselves as co-conspirators in our collective liberation. So we are out here trying to move and groove and get free with the folks that we bail out, and also want to respect their leadership and their expertise as people that have been incarcerated. And we've done that historically through fellowship programs and also through providing supportive services with the folks that we bailed out. And our last, but definitely not least, strategic priorities is to provide thought leadership or love leadership. And that's just to say that as Black people that have been doing this work since 2017, we are going on our 4th Black Mama's Bailout. Yay, that we are experts in our experience. As people that have been closest to the problems, we are also closest to the abilities to mold the solutions. And that should be listened to, that should be honored, that should be valued, and that should be respected. And we are always in a posture of invitation. So we've created resource materials, and we've been providing technical assistance to people across the country who want to do bailouts of their own or want to figure out tactical solutions to pretrial detention, money bail, and mass criminalization. And so that's what we do. That is really a really important part of our work. And these webinars are part of that strategic priority. So we are glad that y'all are here, and we hope that we can continue to build with y'all and learn from y'all and get free together. So that was MBO. And as I shared, this week is one of our primary weeks of bailouts. This week we will be having bailouts in 25 cities across the US. We have a cute little map that I'm gonna ask if you can share that map. But we'll be doing bailouts in cities We're trying to get a mama free in LA, so shout out to you, Miss Betty. I see you. We're trying to get folks free in, we have been getting folks free in Philly, getting folks free in Jackson, Mississippi, getting folks free in Detroit, Michigan, getting folks free in Miami, Florida, and all across the US. But those are a few cities to name. And so really, really excited to be doing this again for the 4th year, and that people are continuing in spite of the challenges that we're seeing with COVID-19 in the jails and the barriers that we're seeing. Yes, in the DMV. Yes, Kiana, we cannot forget y'all. And so in spite of those, like the challenges that COVID-19 is giving us, our people are resourceful and our people are still in the midst of getting people free. And so this is why we're here today. And this is why what we're going to be talking about, and just wanting to hear from folks who are doing bailouts right now, if they have any sort of issues that they want to troubleshoot, and then also leaning into the collective wisdom of some folks that are on this call but are participants but have also been doing bailouts since the beginning with us as well. So we're here to talk about that. We're here to identify any barriers that folks may be having. And we recognize that some of those barriers off the top have been like having affordable bails. We know that even amidst the decarceration tactics, which is really, really great, that there are people still being held pretrial, and those that are being held pretrial often have higher bails, such as in California, or detainers, such as in Pennsylvania. And so really want to just figure out how we get our folks free. And then also like having access to safe housing in this time as well. So that is the things, that is the grounding, and we are going to move into just some other topics that we've seen or some issues that have come up around the bailouts. One of the things is meeting fundraising goals. So we recognize everybody has fundraising goals. Everybody is trying to raise these coins to get our folks free. And we also know that sometimes fundraising goals aren't met, or people are not being able to fundraise in the ways that they have hoped. And so want to just think through and speak to some points about like, what does it mean if that doesn't happen? And just how do we shift and be agile in the face of a pandemic, in the face of challenges and barriers, and do some last minute fundraising. So one of the things is continue to be on social media. Social media has been our friend. We've been able to raise a lot of coins on social media. We've been able to amplify the efforts of other people on social media. Today is actually our local fundraising day. So on our channels at National Bailout on Instagram and Twitter and things, we have been uplifting the work of our local organizers who are trying to raise local coins to free people, to support people, to do all of the things in those 25 cities that we just shown. So y'all should definitely make sure to like continue to be on the social media. If you need amplification, to tag National Bailout so we can amplify the work that y'all are doing. Send the people who have supported you personal messages. You know your people, you know who have supported you for the past couple of years, and they most likely will support you again. You know, so tapping into those resources, tap into who we already know, who we've already identified, sending emails to people, sending newsletters out, and just to like, usually we would say go to the barbershop, we would say go to the church and collect the offering, but we know that that's not actually real right now in the age of social distancing. But we know that there's still local faith-based groups that are available and willing to fundraise on our behalf. So really would ask for your local faith group to take up an offering, a digital offering, a Sunday service offering for Black liberation. So that's one thing that we advise folks to do, especially those of y'all who are trying to meet those fundraising goals. We also just like want to remind, like, I know that we, in this moment, that if things feel scarce, right? And like, we feel like we're operating out of a place of scarcity in very real ways, which is like capitalism. But want to just want to remind that like we aren't operating out of a place of scarcity, and really want to lean into the abundance. And the abundance is not just coins, but the abundance is also resources. The abundance is our folks. The abundance is like our ability to strategize together and get free together. The abundance is to say like, yo, I got Lyft rides that are available, right? The abundance is to say, yo, I got housing that's available because I'm staying with my partner or whatever, right? Like that's what the abundance is. Or like, oh, actually, I tried this in the DMV. This might actually work in Florida, right? So just like to be able to collectively pool our resources, and those resources can look so many different ways, right? And to just like to do that so we can get and assess what we have, and to meet the needs of the folks that we're trying to get free. So really just want to say like, amidst scarcity, we still operating out of abundance over here. And to also just be real. Like now is the time to be as honest as possible about like what it is and what it ain't. And to say like, okay, bet like I have $15,000 for bail funds, and I can only bail out 2 people, right? Or I've identified 2 people with $5,000 bonds. Like that means that you want to bail out 2 people, and that's okay. And that means that like there's 2. I'm sorry, y'all. That means that there's 2 less people that are inside of a cage. That means that there's 2 more people that are outside in their communities, in their homes, with their people, in safer housing, and being nourished, right? So I would just also just suggest that we like shift our understanding of wins, and just having 1 less person incarcerated is a win. So it don't have to be some grand, big old bailout where, you know, you bailing out 50 people. That's beautiful, that's wonderful. But if it's 2 and we can support those folks, right? If you can support those folks for the next 6 months, and we can make sure that those folks can be stabilized and don't end up back in a cage, then that's a win, right? So just want to make sure that we are able to be strategic about our priorities, to name those priorities, to shift those priorities, to be agile and flexible, and do the work. And also to make sure that you're using the hashtag Free Black Mamas in your digital fundraising and your comms things, because we want to make sure that we are able to capture how big the bailouts actually are, and to make sure to capture the work in its fullness. Right? To be like, oh shit, just like the map that y'all saw just now, right? And there might be more places that are doing bailouts, but those are the places that we know about and that we are in community and that we are supporting. And so if there is more, then you should be using the hashtag Free Black Mamas or hollering at myself in the lane as well, to make sure that we can provide support in whatever ways that looks like. And also, if folks have immediate questions, they can put them in a chat box. But we also are going to be waiting to the end for questions, whether folks have to hop or just, you know, their spirit is moving to ask a question right now, then you can do so. But if not, we're going to wait. And then that also, another big topic that folks are in line with the fundraising is just like the comms and the outreach, but particularly like traditional comms and media. We know that these media outlets have been hitting folks up, and we know that these media outlets haven't been hitting folks up or haven't been responsive, especially to more local and rural organizations and groups. But we just like encourage y'all to like continue to push the narrative, to continue to talk about the bailout work, continue to do this in a liberatory and abolitionist framework. So not get hung up on the conversations about like people's innocence or people's guilt, because we know that people that are being held pretrial detention have not been convicted of anything, right? And we know that our criminal legal system or our criminal punishment system is a farce, and that there is actually no such thing as a fair trial. In that most people, and 90% of people, plead guilty, right? So like sticking to what we know and making sure that like we uplift what we know as true, right, is really, really important. And especially for those of us that are like Black-led and Black-centered, it's really important that we own our narrative, that we tell the truth about our experiences and our stories. And this is the time to do that. So tell the truth, right? Tell about what we know, tell about how our people are being harmed, and tell about how our people need to be set free for the safety of all of us, right? Especially when we're speaking about flattening the curve, that people being vulnerable to this virus inside of jails is not actually helping our public safety either. So just continue to talk about that, continue to tell the truth, continue to say that bail is not meant to protect us, and also being concise with your messaging. You can keep it short and simple. You can, we had a comms webinar a few weeks ago in which some folks just talked about like, you speak to whatever you want to speak to. People's questions are people's questions, but whatever messaging that you need to have out there is a messaging that you continue to push, and you continue to like own that. And I think especially those of us who have been doing this for a long time, we recognize that this is a tactic and a tool out of many of our tactics and tools. So continuing to push this as a tactic. If folks need to talk about this and get their message out through writing your own op-eds, you can do that. And we've also been offering support for local groups to write op-eds as well. So if folks need support in doing that, y'all can hit us up and we'll put our emails in the chat box. But we can help provide op-ed support. And also don't be scared to use your own media, right? If you gotta write a Medium article, do that. If you got, like, do whatever it is that you gotta do and get as creative as you need to get in order to push out our stories. And yeah, as I shared, just like make sure that we are able to tell the truth about the stories, make sure that you are not having conversations that you don't want to have, right? Are not going down the rabbit hole of like innocent and guilty and violent and nonviolent and all of these things that we know are like false and false dichotomies. And when we recognize that this whole last system is violent. So just want to make sure that like your messaging is concise, you're speaking the truth, you're owning the narratives about the harms of money bail and pretrial detention on our communities, in the fact that being in a cage is essentially a death sentence, especially in the age of the coronavirus. And continue to say that, continuing to do that in all of the ways and in every way. So that is what we have around comms. And I'm going to pass it to Kayla Gore from BLM Memphis to talk about other challenges to finding people to bail out.
Okay, I'm dealing with a broken computer, y'all, but I'm gonna work through it. I can't see y'all half of the time, but I can't see y'all at all actually, but I can see Arissa and Delaine's beautiful faces, and I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna briefly go over the presentation I did at our convening we just had in Nashville. Stop. Okay. And the presentation was called Freeing All of Our People, because what I've seen since I've been doing bailouts alongside with NBO and BLM Memphis is that we haven't had like a huge influx of TGNC folks in the numbers that we put out in our Big Black Bail Report. It is not reflective of the language that we provide when we do our outward-facing marketing and when we're fundraising and things like that. So we want to kind of let this year be the year that we change that all around. All right. And I can barely see it on my phone, yeah, so bear with me. And I could just go over it in conversation. I don't have to go through the slides because it's gonna be a lot. Yeah, so the reason I called it Freeing Our People is because we haven't really truly been freeing all of our people. And I know that for a lot of folks in different areas, you don't have the capacity to find TGNC folks inside the jails. Well, hopefully after this little conversation and you all ask questions that you need to ask, you'll be better equipped to be able to find TGNC folks inside the jails during this Black Mama's bailout and Black Mama and Caregiver bailout. So one of the things is something that you can do all year round, not specific toward the bailout or anything that you're specifically working on with your group or organization, but you're base building trans folks into your organization, into your organizing, you're politicizing them, and making sure that, thank you for that, TGNC is transgender non-conforming. It's an all-encompassing acronym to just be like, trans folks, bam. But yeah, so base building folks into your organizing year round, not specific to one particular action or acts, because that seems like you're being, that seems pretty transactional. And we know that transactional relationships are not always the best relationships, especially for Black and brown folks, specifically for trans people, because we've been used and utilized before and then discarded once that that goal has been met or whatever it is has been accomplished. So in this sense, we want to make sure that we're putting people in places in our organization and making sure that they feel comfortable and they have a space, not just as a member, but as somebody who has decision-making power, somebody who is on salary, somebody who has an intricate role in the decision-making process leading up to whatever it is that's going on, making them feel a part of what's going on. And that's what we did here in that's what they did here in Memphis prior to me being a part of the board of BLM Memphis for our Memphis Community Bill Fund. Is they reached out to me, they saw me as a stakeholder in the community. I had direct connections with folks on the outside. They didn't necessarily know like my history with incarceration or that I could, infiltrate the inside as well. But they just knew that I was a Black trans woman. I was doing the work. And they approached me in a very generative way. They didn't come to me and say, hey, we're doing this bailout. Come rock out with us. It was baby steps. And I like consistency. So it was baby steps and they were consistent. They came to me and they basically were like, hey, we know you're planning this big rally in Memphis. How can we help support this trans equity rally that you're planning here? And I was like, shit, I don't know. Can y'all provide security? Because nobody had offered security. And that was one of our biggest concerns because the Memphis Police Department, they were not concerned with protecting us or showing up or any of those things, even though we applied for a permit, put them on notice that we were going to have these events. And when we have the events, they don't show up. And it's not that we want their protection, but it's just that I've noticed that when I'm at Black Lives Matter rallies or any other rallies, there's a heavy concentration of police. And they say it's for the protection of the activists. So in the sense that we don't get that same support, I'm like, so do you not want to protect us? But BLM offered that, and I was like, that was great. Like that was a olive branch that was extended to the community of trans folks here in Memphis. And that went from one isolated like collaboration to more and more gradually leading up to the bailouts. And then I became a part of the bailouts as a bail buddy is what we call them here. And yeah. And the second year I became the supportive services lead for our bailouts here, which like kind of like planted me. It was like the first year was a seed. The second year we got that bloom and I became the supportive services lead here, which made me feel like I had a part of it, which led me to also start base building other trans folks into Black Lives Matter Memphis here in Memphis, which was something that hadn't been done before in a generative way like that. So honestly, I would say that is your biggest thing to do, because we know when our people are incarcerated, and you know how media goes, a lot of our information doesn't get shared as much as white folks. So yeah, that was a big thing, like making sure that they had stakeholders within the group to be able to say, hey, I'm hearing through the grapevine that this girl's in jail, she has this kind of bond, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it's happened. And this is year 4. And now in Memphis, a lot of people refer to me, especially in the trans community, as the bail lady. Like they call me, hey, somebody in jail, she went down the wrong way on the street. I'm like, I don't really care about what she did. How much is her bond? Will you help me make sure she gets back to court? All of the things like, because we don't have it necessarily set up like at the organization that I started to provide all the wraparound services that NBO provides during the Black Mamas bailout. However, we work as a community network, call it mutual aid if you want, but we work as a community network to keep people connected to folks and make sure that they have what they need in order to make it back to jail. And I'm gonna backtrack to when they first asked me about being a part of the bailouts. I was like, y'all gonna bail people out of jail, and then what? And then they explained to me about the supportive services part and the needs assessment and things like that. Because I was like, you can't just bail people out of jail and just expect them to be okay. You got to be able to put some action behind that and to be able to support them and hold them throughout that case. And then sometimes even after that case, hence our fellowship. The fellowship is a very important part and a very important tool, because a lot of times people don't hit the ground running when they come out of jail, because we're not looking at how long they've been in jail. Because to my knowledge, we've bailed out somebody who's been in jail for at least 4 years. So people don't always necessarily hit the ground running. So it's good to have those supportive services to be able to wrap around folks. And Arissa mentioned earlier, like, even if you're only bailing out 2 people, like, we've done something. If we can get them to the end of their case, whatever that end looks like, as long as we can get them to the end of their case, we know, you know, from like experience and from data, that a person on the outside has a better chance of a better outcome with their cases versus somebody on the inside. And I can personally attest to that. I didn't get bailed out. I stayed in pretrial 1.5 years. I served another 1.5 years at a correctional facility. So I can surely tell you that I wouldn't have signed for time as soon as I did had I been able to actively work my case on the outside, because I wouldn't have been so pressed to get back on the outside. And that's what a lot of times that happens. But I wanted to go back to just basically talking about what Arissa said. Even if you're only bailing out 2 people, we're doing something. But I want you to know that we need to be able to handle the people and hold the people right when we get them out. So don't, if you got $10,000, don't go and try and find 10 people with $1,000 bond. You know, try to go ahead and budget out your money, because like what we do here, we're getting $10,000 for supportive services. We've already identified and said we're going to bail out 5 people. Each person has a $2,000 pool to be able to be supported throughout the process. And then we're also doing our own collective fundraising to make sure that we can support them in addition to that $2,000 if that is the case for individuals. But I want people to, like, base bill trans folks into your organizing. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, when I come back to convenings year after year, I get depressed. I'd be like, where the trans people at? I know they in jail because I was there. So we have to, like, if that takes going to the LGBT community center, connecting with them and saying, hey, we're doing this thing. Would you let us know if anybody contacts you and says that they're in jail and they need bond posted? Like, but I can't stress enough, you have to get people who are directly affected a part of this movement in every aspect. That's from the advisory board all the way down to whatever. But we have to, like, be very strategic about that. And I know that this group, I'm looking at the list of attendees, and I know that we're all very strategic in all the work that we do. So be strategic about your base building, and know that having somebody on board, and also, like, pouring into them, not just having them there, but pouring into them, politicizing them, making sure that they have the professional development skills that they need. If you can identify those things, or if they verbalize those things to you and say, hey, well, I'm not very good with Zoom meetings, or I'm not good with Google Docs. You know, we're not discarding folks. We're trying to pour into them and edify them to the point where they can pass that on to somebody else. Kind of like the situation that I did. After I got in for 1 year and I was like, okay, this is a safe space. I can, you know, bring other people into this space and know that they're going to be treated the same. It gradually increases. And yeah, it gradually increases, and it helps build our own capacity to support our own community. Because before BLM approached me, I wasn't thinking of anything about this. But in my own organization that I founded, we've kind of like built in a bail program, because it happens year round. And for trans folks, it's way harsher. It's like, for trans folks, it's how it is now in the jails for people amidst COVID. That's how it was, you know, post-COVID for trans folks. We were isolated 23 hours a day, not able to access, you know, recreation and things like that. It's adversely harder for folks. And I can only imagine what they're enduring now during COVID, where the jails are, they are segregating folks to protect them. However, from news reports and media, we see that that's not the case. They're not being protected. They're only being isolated to have like experienced mass infections of COVID. But yeah, I'm gonna stop here. And if y'all have any questions, I think there's a time at the end of the call for questions. And you can always hit me up too.
Thank you, Kayla. I'm curious, like, I've heard stories, like I watched Beautiful's video and things like that, where like people knew you inside of the jail. Like people like said, oh, the bail lady, call the bail, like people that was even like working inside. And like, were you just telling, because I heard, you know, like from different organizers, like people had the number inside the jail and people posted it inside the, you know, was passing it out. And is that how people just started to know you, like?
So I worked at the LGBT Community Center for 3 years prior to what I do now. And people just, I guess they just knew like that I did work with trans folks, and Beautiful's request wasn't directly related to bail. Because I'm not sure if, because this was a cisgender person, so a jail guard who had became friends or whatever was really nice to Beautiful inside the jail, mentioned to her that maybe she should contact me to see if, you know, I could provide some resources for her while she was in jail, or just like a pen pal or whatever it was. And we went to the Black Mamas Bailout convening in Alabama, which was 2 years ago. Was it a year ago?
The National Council, yeah, the Free Her Conference, yeah.
Yeah, so we went, we did that. And when I came back, I had a letter in the mail from Beautiful. It had been sent to the center and they forwarded it to me. And it was just basically Beautiful introducing herself, explaining how she got my information from the jail guard, and just asking me what kind of resources could I send her, some books and some magazines. And I was just thinking, I was like, let me just hit up the National Bailout and see if, like, it's a long shot. Her bail was $40,000. I looked it up. I was like, it's a long shot, but let's see what's up. Let's see what's up. So I hit up Arissa, Delane, everybody with the advisory committee, and was like, hey, we got a Black trans woman. She's in jail. She's been in jail for 4 years. She's been held in isolation majority of her time there. Is there any help that we could possibly give her, like whatever there was? I didn't ask for a dollar amount. I was just like, what kind of help can we provide for her? And a week later, I got an email. It was like, we're going to wire the money to BLM. Y'all bail her out. We're going to send some supportive services funds. And Beautiful got out with a lot of other folks. We have a line called Phone Home. And it's a year-round line. It's funded through a small micro grant from Campaign for Southern Equality in North Carolina. And basically what we do is we just keep minutes on the phone and allow people to call. And when people call, we always encourage them to pass the number out to other trans folks who are inside the jails who may not have access. And it didn't come about around like bail work. It mostly was about for trans folks when they get incarcerated. Sometimes they need to get their things from a hotel or a rooming house or wherever they're staying, so that when they do get out, they're not starting over from scratch. Because that's what a lot of people were coming to me after they got out of jail. They didn't have anything, clothes, you know, hygiene products, they didn't have anything because they were locked up on a whim. They didn't expect to leave their house and go to jail. And then they spend 30, 45 days in jail because they don't have $100 to pay bond, and then they lose their apartment and their things are thrown out on the street. So that was in response to that. So they could be able to call somebody and say, hey, can you go and pick up my things? Or, hey, can you tell my mom I'm in jail? You know, she doesn't know I'm in jail. I don't have her number, but I have this number, because it's a very easy number to remember. It's 901-352-1660. Super easy to remember. We pass that number out when we do our street team and do our Know Your Rights workshop with people who are doing survival sex. Yeah, and that's how people just know to call. It's like, and yeah, and people don't have like a high expectation. Sometimes they call and they're like, hey, can you just send me a couple dollars, you know, so I can get some hygiene products? And then I'm like, how much is your bail? And you know, and yeah, it's crazy. My dog is like acting real dumb right now, y'all. I'm sorry. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that did. Thank you. Thank you. That answered my question. And just in Memphis, what has changed for y'all to pay bail, especially amidst COVID? Like, y'all can't go inside the jail, obviously, but y'all have to pay bail through whatever.
So our city is open. Yeah, we're slowly reopening businesses. I'm suggesting that folks continue to practice social distancing at all costs, if it's at all possible, because a lot of folks are like being forced to go back to work, even though they're like, I don't want to go back to work because I don't think it's safe yet, especially for black and brown folks, especially since our symptoms are showing up way different than white people. And white people are recovering like at a higher rate than we are. And that's just because of systemic racism, basically. Um, but what has changed for us is we're going to be very much more strategic about like identifying folks who don't mind going into the jails to actually pay the bonds, identifying folks who are going to be our clergy people who are going to go in and do our pre-needs assessment before people are bailed out to see if they actually want to be bailed out. I think that's really the only change here. I know that our district attorney and our sheriff have been actively trying to decrease population in jails, which I don't see a significant like drop or decrease to my standard, especially since like one of our jails just tested, like I think it was like 70% of the inmates had tested positive for coronavirus. And from inside conversations from inmates who've been calling our hotline is that they're isolating people who test positive, but they're not telling people that they've tested positive until after they've isolated them. And then they're isolating them in a part of the jail that's an open dorm, which means there are like 50 beds in this dorm. There's no privacy anywhere. The bathrooms are open air spaces. Like it's just a whole open air space where people are. Normally there's a guard inside the dormitory. Now there's no guard inside the dormitory. So those 50 people are just like, it could be a Thunderdome is what, people inside the jail call it when people fight. They call it Thunderdoming. And it could be that, especially for vulnerable communities like older folks, LGBT people, more specifically trans femmes. It could be very dangerous being in one of those open pods. And then you risk the chance of reinfection. If you do overcome coronavirus or COVID-19, you're still in that area with all the other people who tested positive. So your chances of reacquiring COVID-19 are super high. Whereas I would think if that was the case, if someone tested positive, you would maybe isolate them. And I hate to say that, but I would think it would be the total opposite of putting people in a big dorm and then not informing them that they've tested positive until you have them secured in this dorm. Mm-hmm. And then you're telling people, oh, you have, or they're not even telling, I'm sorry, but they're not telling people, the other inmates in the dorm are saying, oh, you're here because you have COVID, you got the Rona. And I think that's really irresponsible for them to do that and not provide people some type of access to mental health care, because you're in jail, one, and now you're dealing with a life-threatening ailment, and you're not even getting access to what you need to be able to process what's going on with your body. What are the outcomes? What are the possibilities? Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Kayla. I am now going to pass it to Delane to also talk some more about supportive services and what we've been seeing.
Thank you. And one thing I wanted to touch on before I move into that Kayla had mentioned before, Kayla had talked about just casual street teaming and the hotline that y'all have and the flyering that was done in jails. And I think a lot of what we see right now is a lot of organizing happening over the interwebs, a lot of social media work being done, but a lot of what folks may refer to as old school, organizing or outreach that looks like street teaming and hotlines and phone banking, putting flyers on your neighbor's doors, or just posting them up at the local LGBT center. All those things is also about not only about the folks you have access to or who have access to you via interwebs, but who's your neighbor and who are the trans and the non-binary and the gender non-conforming folks who live in your neighborhood, and how do you also pull them into the bail work, or how do you tap into the work they're already doing? They may also be doing bail work too. And so just naming what Kayla was saying around just this being a tactic for the long run as well, that will help with what Arissa was talking about earlier around fundraising and outreach for the next time you do bailouts, but also like Kayla said, it's also to get folks to know you and reach out to you if they know folks inside. And it means that you're also widening your base so that if you historically have not had trans and GNC folks, non-binary folks, a part of your work, you do that slow work with building with them. That's non-transactional, like Kayla said, showing up for them like you're asking them to show up for you in your work. And that community building is definitely a part of this work as well. Telling the truth, narrative shifting, political education, and community building is a part of this bailout work. It's not only this bailout season that's happening in May, but the work needs to be done year round. So just want to touch on that Kayla and Arissa have been speaking to. But yes, about supportive services. So especially in this moment where we see a lot of mutual aid networks that are being built up, that have already existed, are becoming more visible, being ways that lots of folks have been able to get resources like money and folks being able to like deliver food to folks' house and things like that. And as folks had named in the call, supportive services are something that we also know is a requirement, that if we're getting these folks out there, if we're bringing our people home, we need to make sure they're also supported and cared for with whatever they may need. And the ways we assess that is that needs assessment that we do prior to bringing them home. But just how do we talk about and think about when supportive services are lacking, or when they're hard to find, or we don't know where to look for them? And these are questions that are real and happen a lot. And so we also encourage folks, and I know we're in the moment of bills right now, but we're also encouraging folks that, again, this work starts a long time before May hits or before April hits. We need to be organizing and developing relationships with folks in the community. We need to start this process of identifying who is in our network, who's not in our network that we need to pull in, and what can they offer and what do they provide, and how do we pull them into this work beforehand. It starts with connecting deeply with the folks who are in your community, with your neighbors, with their families, and again, getting a sense of doing asset mapping. So what is present and what are the resources that are available to us, and how do we pull that into our work here? And a lot of folks that they have been doing this year and have been doing for many years is identifying case managers as well as bail buddies that Kayla has spoken about before, but I think could also speak to more, and just when folks are building out, having them be matched to a case manager or a bail buddy who not only has a lay of the land and has a lay of the ecosystem as to what things are available, but can actually also direct the folks we bring home to those services, to follow up with them, to help with transportation, to help pay for it with the supportive services funding that they have, but just making sure that these folks are connected and have people who they can reach out to when they need to, and who have the ability and have the knowledge of what's happening, and again, that lay of the land, to connect them to what's popping, what's moving in the neighborhood and the community, that they can get whatever services they need. And I think the bail buddy system that Kayla was speaking of is a really dope thing that folks have been using as well, and have been figuring out how that looks based on capacity and also what's available in the neighborhoods. But yeah, Kayla, would you speak to what that bail buddy system has looked like in Memphis specifically, and you building that out?
Yes, and we actually just cleaned it up a little bit because we're going to do a call this Friday with the people who we are going to have be our bail buddies this year. So the first part of that process is identifying how many people that you're going to actually bail out. So knowing that number, you can know about how many bail buddies you need. So we're doing 5, so we needed 5 people. We actually have 7 folks. And it's good to have extra people because some people might need a little more than others. From experience, like that $2,000, we've had some folks who've only used like a couple hundred of that. So and some people have needed beyond the $2,000, depending on the situations. We've had people to experience, I'm talking like, especially last year, to experience everything imaginable throughout the process of them being bailed out, completing their court case. Yeah, and they've exceeded the funds that we've had, but we've been able to reallocate funds from other people who we bailed out. So identifying how many bail buddies you need, And then being strategic about how you're connecting folks. Like Dee said, people who know the lay of the land. If there are people who, and that was one of the things for me, I knew the lay of the land, which is why they was like, you should lead these supportive services. And even if the person doesn't know the lay of the land, because we don't, like I said, we're not trying to discard folks, we're trying to build people up. One tool that you all can use is community mapping, which is basically creating a list, and it could be a live document where it's continuously being added to see what's available in the community. How do you access those things? Do you call on the phone? Do you do an application online, then call on the phone? Like mapping that out for folks so that it's easily accessible for people, not just the people that we're bailing out, but also the bail buddies. And then once we do that, once we identify those folks who are going to be bail buddies and we're matching them up with, and it could be small stuff. It could be like, oh, she's from South Memphis. The person we're bailing out is from South Memphis. Let's hook them up, you know, or they're both 35 years old. Let's hook them up. But you have to be strategic about it because that helps with the success of this program. Is making sure that you're connecting folks with good people. Even if you want to go so deep to be like, oh, she's a Scorpio, I'm a connect her with that Virgo because they go good together. Hey, it's a real thing, y'all. Don't laugh at me. And it works because this is a relationship that you're forging with these two people. This is not just like a business thing. This is a relationship. I still have bail buddies that call me and hit me up, not because they want something, because they're checking on me. They like, you held me down, you know, and some people, I wasn't even a bail buddy. I was just like the person who holds the bus cards and can deliver stuff when their bail buddies don't have capacity to do it. I would step in. But yeah, people will call. Like, so these are not just like, once this case is over, they're gone. Sometimes that is the case, and that's okay. But a lot of times these people form relationships that last longer than the court case will last. So yeah, making sure that you're strategic about pairing folks up with people. And I know we're doing this nationally, so people have different language for that, and they might already be doing this. We're just in the South, so we're saying bail buddy. Up north, they're probably saying case managers, and that's cool and that's okay. But we all have the same goal, and hopefully we're all using the same tools so that we'll all come to the same conclusion. Yeah.
Yes.
Did that get it, Dee, or you want me to?
No, yeah. No, it was perfect. Thank you. I wasn't sure if Russ was about to say something. No? Okay, dope. Cool. And then the last thing we want to touch upon is, well, one, that again, like depending on the person, what they want, what they need, this could be a commitment. This can be long. So just remembering that like the folks we bring out are also like people. And we want to be building deep relationships with them if they also want that as well, which means that this goes past just the day of bailing them out and maybe a month after. But also as we're getting folks out, there are last minute things that can happen that we're not, maybe we did the needs assessment and we thought we knew all the things that our people needed coming home, but there may be something that happens and we weren't aware of. Or maybe we have a bail buddy system and we have a bail buddy paired up with a homecoming, one of our people coming home, but then something happens and that bail buddy can no longer commit to the responsibilities that they had. So just always having backups, always having a container of additional folks and people that you can reach out to, additional people that you can tap for funds, additional resources, just whatever, when you're making a bailout plan and you're putting aside something for this, or you're making sure that you're having folks sign up for different roles and responsibilities to ensure that you just have backups because anything could happen. And these bailouts really alter and change based on where you are, based on the bail, the jail, the bail season, what's happening. COVID-19 was unexpected. So just make sure you're having backups. And if things are falling through to One, reach out to National Bailout. We're here to provide tactical and just general assistance, technical assistance and support for folks who are moving through these bailouts, and also know that you are a part of a larger network of people. So if it means like you have to do a vulnerable ask on your Facebook page or your social media page, that's real means that you need to go through your phone book, if people still have that, or your phone contact list, and start doing some phone banking and hitting up people to make some asks. The only thing you'll receive is a no if folks can't commit to it or provide it. And that's when that is something that is available to y'all and folks should tap into as well. And if folks are having issues finding supportive services, because that's real, especially in this moment, then we encourage folks to find a local case manager, and maybe that's something you had already been working through and already have identified, or maybe that's something you need to find now. But if you're looking for that person, to reach out again to National Bailout, and we can drop the email address in the chat box, but it's info@nationalbailout.org, and we can get you connected to CRIFC, which stands for Communities. I always cannot remember this acronym. Communities for families, individuals, and communities. What did I miss? I said what?
Center for Resilient Individuals, Families, and Communities.
Oh, I said community twice. Yeah, Centers for Resilience, Individuals, Families, and Communities. Yes, acronyms are not my thing, y'all. But they are an organization that's a part of our advisory committee, and they help with support services. They help identify case managers for folks, and also just help with figuring out what a case manager's role is and how that will look within your bailout plan. So again, if you're having difficulty in finding case managers or bail buddies for your people, reach out to us so we can connect you directly to CRIFC, who can support with that.
Yes. And also I love, hi Devon. Yes, Devon is here. So if Devon wants to speak, because Devon is a supportive services queen.
Yes, let us know.
And definitely let Devon speak. Hey. And so I love that y'all, like what y'all said specifically about, like, it might be called case managers up north, it might be called bail buddies, right? But also like I spoke with Nubian from CRFC yesterday, and like was just like, oh, and case managers don't have to be technically trained, right? You know, like these are just people that know the lay of the land, right? Like people that know how somebody could possibly, like, you know, get what they need, right? Like know what it looks like to fill out an application for services, right, within the government or whatever, right? So just want to name that a case manager is not always somebody that you think is like some certified person with a license in social work, right? So just want to name like that too, and just like recognizing our people for the skills that they have and the expertise that they hold is important. Thank y'all. So we are now going to open it up because this is a troubleshooting webinar for folks that have questions regarding their bailouts, just thoughts, challenges, things that they want to share with us and that we can possibly support with. And I see that there was a question regarding the map before we get into that. And like someone asked if there's not a bailout in New Jersey. So we do not have a bailout, a national bailout supported bailout in New Jersey. We do not. Do folks have questions? And if you have questions, you can put it. Miss Betty has a question about federal bailouts. Do you want to clarify, Miss Betty? So paying federal bail, I understand that's what you're saying. I don't know of anyone paying a federal bail. And I also see a question about anyone that's organized in Orange County, California. SC Justice Group. Ms. Betty said that she knows a lot of people with bails in the Fed. I think mostly people are doing bailouts in local county jails. So it's mostly local bails. And then Felicity asks if we know if folks organized in Orange County. Our member organization, SC Justice Group, which Ms. Betty reps, is doing bailouts, particularly trying to bail someone out of LA County right now, but I don't think in Orange County, but in LA County with a $200,000 bail. So it's real out here and really just trying to get this mama home ASAP. Are there other questions? And if folks have additional questions, they can always reach out to us at info@nationalbailout.org. We are really glad, and we can connect as well. So if folks are like, yo, I want to support with the bailout in California, you can definitely reach out to us and we can connect y'all. There's definitely some real organizing happening to release folks to get pretrial detention. Release folks that are being held pretrial, to call people's judicial counsel out in California, which we'll also make sure to send along in our notes and follow-ups on how people can support, particularly in California, because that is where the highest bail amounts are. And people are literally being held on ransom for $500,000 and $200,000 in a sunshine state that's supposed to be liberal in all of that. So want to name that as a thing. And James also posted from Dignity and Power Now out in California and LA, posted their website as well. Cool. Okay, y'all, I feel like that means that we have done what we came to do, which is try to speak to some challenges that are coming up. We are here. We are not going anywhere, and really just are striving and working to free Black mamas before Mama's Day. So if you see the hashtag Free Black Mamas, and just recognizing that when we say like Free Black Mamas, we are really, it's important for us to be in our politic, which is a Black queer feminist politic that centers historically marginalized people in order to free them all. So we are out here making sure that we are freeing our people, right? And we are making sure that we are freeing those that we know have been deeply criminalized and that have been disproportionately represented inside the criminal legal system because of their Blackness, because of their transness, because of their queerness, and unapologetically doing that. So let's free some Black mamas, y'all. And Medusa is asking like, yo, and Medusa is censoring that, right? In Pittsburgh, it's 30% Black, but 70% of the people inside jails are Black, right? And we know that that is actually across the board, and unfortunately, that those numbers are similar across the board. And Medusa also is asking about suggestions in navigating white gatekeepers. Child, that is always the question and the task. Do y'all have any? I don't have the answers to navigate white gatekeepers besides not deal.
Besides what?
Not deal with them.
That's what I was gonna say. Don't deal with them. sneeze on them.
Wow.
No, I'm with Arissa. Like, by all means, like, try to like maneuver around them. I know in some places that's inevitable. You have to deal with them. And I would say maybe base build some white folks in and let them deal with their own people.
Right.
We have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Medusa said that public defenders only want to deal with white folks, and that's something that you may not be able to do anything about. So as Kayla is saying, just like, how do we?
That's real. That's real.
Building white folks. That's real.
And if we're only focusing on Black folks,
mm-hmm.
they want to help us.
Mm-hmm.
If that's their thinking.
I also wonder about orgs that are supposed to have this politic of like, you know, anti-Black, working through anti-Blackness and anti-racism, like SURGE, which is, again, acronyms.
Showing up for racial justice.
Showing up for racial justice, yes. I don't know if they have a Pittsburgh chapter, but just thinking about different national and local organizations like that you can tap into, because some of them be real eager to be like, word, I got you. And like, I will do what I need to do. And I will like step in and be in front and have to deal with whoever you need to deal with. So also figuring out like, how do you identify those folks as well?
And be clear, right, on what's your ministry, because base building, you know, organizing and navigating white gatekeepers is not my ministry. But like, you have to be clear, right, like on what's your ministry and also what's the work, right? Like, that's not the work should be for, you know, radicalized and politicized white people to organize their folks. And to mitigate harm, right? Black people having to do that work is hard as hell. And we don't want to have to do that work, and it's not our work to do. And then someone named that in Orange County, they have something called the OC Racial Justice Collaborative. So yeah, so organize the white folks that are politically aligned, and not just in theory, but in practice. Yeah, tap into those folks, tap into co-conspirators that are actually about dismantling power and transforming things, and not just like the maintenance of white supremacy. And I know that sometimes that can be hard to tell, but do that, Medusa. And especially in the bail reform space, and I'll know, and I'll just name it and be honest, but like in the bail reform space, in the pretrial detention space, like it's definitely, you know, full of white gatekeepers, and trying to navigate that is really hard, because white supremacy is real, and even the most progressive minded or outwardly progressive folks, instinct is to follow the leadership of white people, or to not follow the leadership of Black folks, not follow the leadership of those most directly impacted. And I think we just have to tell the truth about that. So uplifting that, like talking the shaming the public defenders is a tactic, right? Like organizing folks, public pressure is a tactic. And we have to use all of the tools that we have. But we have to also be real that like anti-Black racism is a thing, and a lot of us are socialized to be anti-Black. And so like, to be honest about like the need to follow Black leadership, right? To follow Black people, to follow those that are directly impacted by these problems, and to trust Black leadership. And be honest if you don't, right? And like, that's the work that, again, SURGE or the Orange County Racial Justice Collaborative needs to do, right? We all have our work. We all are supposed to be transformed in the service of the work, but part of the work is our own transformation, our own personal growth. And so, Godspeed.
I think the last thing I'll say on that end is before you tap like a white like collective or org, whatever it may be, to do some work to figure out, to like do some community mapping for that org and be like, who are their people, who they're responsive to, who responds to them. And if you're not seeing none of your people represented within that, or if like there's a history of them doing in their politics, and there's a history of them doing the same fuck shit that they're doing now, then those are not the folks. And so again, just like to do a community mapping of the people you are pulling in to be your community mappers, community partners, before actually like solidifying that relationship.
Yeah, yeah. Word. Do folks have any more questions? Cool. Well, y'all, it is Black Mamas Bailout season. This is the season to free some Black mamas and caregivers. It's always a season in our book, but this is definitely the season. So shout us out. Keep doing the Lord's work. And we are here. We're about to get our people free, y'all. Thank you. And hit us up. And next week, as I share, is the recap. So we'll have some beautiful Black organizers on here talking about the work that they done did. We also, folks can continue to support our work by going to nationalbailout.org and donating. All y'all could, you know, those with resources can always share those resources to get folks out. People can purchase these beautiful shirts that Delane and I have on our website as well at nationalbailout.org, and shout out to Philadelphia Printworks, or any other resources that folks have. Like, people have been talking to us about Lyft rides. Shout out to Christina, who's also on the call. And people have, you know, been telling us that they got free homes because they wealthy and they not in New York City, right? And offering that up as a resource as well. And we're just using all of our talents and our tools in service of Black collective liberation. So let's get free, y'all, and let's free some Black mamas. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.